Okay, so today we're going to tackle 6th grade ELA week 5. One thing I just want to remind everybody, if you are turning in the paper and pencil packets, please put your name on every single page just in case they get, lost. I know that there was a lot of packets that didn't have names and they don't know what to do with them. They just kind of have them. We're lucky because we're the only 5th and 6th grade campus, so they will stay with us, but still. All right, so we're going to start with King Midas and the Golden Touch. So to me, I know obviously that this is probably going to be literary, and it's like a fable or a fairy tale. So I'm just going to put a fable because that's what I think it's going to be about. All right, I'm going to read it. We're going to hashtag it as we go, and then we will do the plot organizer. All right, long ago, so the old stories tell us, King Midas ruled the land of Greece. He had everything that money could buy, but he wasn't happy. We'll go ahead and read the next paragraph before we hashtag, because that wasn't very long. He lived in a huge palace made of fine white marble, but he wanted a bigger and better one. He had a splendid garden with a river running through it, but he would have liked one the size of a forest. He had lots of servants, but never enough to satisfy him. I think never enough is like the whole key right here. He's just not happy with whatever he has. Okay. More than anything else, King Midas loved counting his money and piling it into great shining heaps of gold, but always he wanted more. Once he was walking in the garden, the king was surprised to hear someone call his name. The sun shone, the birds sang in the trees, and silver dragonflies came spinning across the pond. King Midas should have been smiling with happiness, but he was his usual grumpy self. Okay, so it looks like we've got dragonfly. Remember, you can pause at any time, or you can rewind, whatever you need to do. I'll make sure you're seeing that. Okay. All right. What scoundrel is hiding in my garden? He scowled. When the servants dragged an old man out of the bushes, the king was astonished to see Selenius, his old school teacher and a friend of the god Dionysus. All right, so I think that's a good hashtag there. We can just Selenius. Not sure I'm saying it right, but remember, when you have a name and you don't know how to pronounce it, you can pronounce it any way you want, because it really isn't going to make a difference as long as you keep it the same throughout your story so you know it's the same person. What are you doing here? King Midas asked. I'm lost, Selenius said. I'm growing old and sometimes I forget where I am. For the first time that day, King Midas smiled. Selenius had always been muddle-headed, he remembered. Instead of sending him away, Midas ordered his servants to prepare a feast for him. How about a feast? That seems unusual, right? I'm going to move my paper up a little. When the two men had finished their meal, the king called for a carriage and sent Selenius back to Dionysus. The god was so pleased that Midas had helped his old friend that he offered to grant him a wish. So there was an ulterior motive. Okay. Hashtag wish. King Midas had only one wish in the world. I wish that everyone I touch would turn gold, he said, his eyes lighting up at the thought of it. Are you sure? Dionysus asked. Sure, the king nodded. So the god kept his promise. Okay, I'm just going to put hashtag gold. Now as King Midas wandered through his garden, he touched first a perfect pink rose, which turned to gold in his hand. He reached up to an apple. Again, it turned to gold. He picked up stones, birds' eggs, snail shells, all changed into gold in his hands. He couldn't stop smiling. The servants followed their king, packing the gold into great deep sacks. Okay. So we could just put touch. Take the gold to my counting house, Midas ordered. I'll see it after lunch. But when he sat down at the table, the king got a shock. Everything he tried to eat, bread, meat, a bunch of grapes, turned into gold and cracked his teeth. He tried to take a sip of wine, but that too flowed into his mouth like melted gold. Uh-oh, so he can't eat. Okay, let me move this up. What shall I do? He asked. I'm hungry and thirsty and I hate all this gold. He rushed back to Dionysus and begged him to undo his magic. I'll never be so foolish and greedy again as long as I live, he promised. Dionysus was sorry for King Midas and sent him to bathe in the river Patroclus so that the golden magic could be washed away. And people say that even now the river shines gold in the sun. So, turned him back. Okay, so if we were going to do the CSPS, then we would do that at this point, but I think we are going to be doing all of that in this plot diagram right here. So it's a little different than what we're used to doing, but we're going to go over all of this together. I'm not going to do all of it. I'm just going to go over it with you. Now remember, we've got our exposition, which is our beginning, our rising action, our climax, our falling action, and then the resolution. Okay, so the title, of course, is, we're gonna abbreviate it to King Midas. And we could use this plot diagram for anything, but we're using it for that. And we don't have an author, but that's okay. We don't need it. Now, what I would do to help you with these, you could break your paper into 3 sections, or break your reading into 3 sections. I'm going to use a different colored pen to do that. And that's going to help you kind of know where everything is, even though we kind of get it, like where the climax, the most important thing is, and that kind of thing. But if we count our paragraphs, we have or our sections, because we didn't do it by paragraph, we did it by kind of the same size sections. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we could go by 3. So right here, this would be your rising action and your setting and all that. And then in here, this is probably going to be where the climax is. And then this will be your falling action. So this just helps you. It's not always perfect because sometimes your climax comes a little later, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So I just broke it into the 3 sections, and that way that'll help me determine what I've got going on. So I'm going to help you with the exposition. That is going to be the setting, the climate, and the characters. So the setting is obviously a long time ago. It's in a garden. Does this look familiar? This is like how we do our CSPS. So this would be our C and our S, right? Long time ago, in a garden. Okay, the situation or the climate. I guess he's grumpy. Grumpy king, maybe? Okay, and of course the character is King Midas. And then they have the god, which was not capitalized because it's not the same as what, you know, we do. And then we have his old teacher, so Silenus. Okay, so we did a little more detail than maybe we would have done on the CSPS. We probably would have just had King Midas in a garden. And that would have been our CS portion. All right, so then our problem is our conflict, okay? So this, I'm just going to put a P here because that's basically what our problem is. And our problem, you should be able to figure that one out. So if you were doing your CSPS, I'm just writing it kind of small here. Let's see if you can see it. I think so. CSPS. So our C and S are here. Our problem is here. And then our solution is going to be over here in the resolution area. Okay? All right. So, as far as rising action, our conflict is like the main problem in the story. Whatever the conflict King Midas is having, or the thing that he's thinking he wants more of. So that's your conflict. Now your rising action is going to be in this first 3 paragraphs here. And that's when he's in the garden and something happens. Okay, that would be your rising action. Okay. All right, and then you've got the climax where maybe his wish is granted. And, you know, that would be probably your best. Your falling action will be in the last 3 paragraphs. And then your resolution, what happens at the very end? What was the solution? I mean, he had the problem. He was given what he wanted, but was it really what he wanted? All right, so we have the protagonist and the antagonist. Okay, the protagonist is like the good guy, and the antagonist is the bad guy. So I'm just going to put that up here. So you decide who the good guy is, and then you decide who the bad guy is. Okay? And then the theme is maybe, you know, I guess we can do that one together. The theme would be like, maybe don't wish for things that you really don't want, you know. Don't wish for things, or things you don't need. You know, he doesn't need it. Okay. All right, so I think that gets you pretty well established on that. So, of course, you could pause at this point, finish up your chart, and then we're going to work on the breakaway. Okay, so the breakaway, here we go. So I'm looking at it. I see some quotation marks through it. As far as Justin New, basketball, I'm kind of thinking it's going to be literary. The breakaway, maybe running away. I don't know. I haven't read it, so I don't know. So I'm going to just do a question mark because I don't know. I don't know. This one has pretty chunky paragraphs, so we should be able to hashtag each one. All right, as far as Justin knew, there was only one way out of his neighborhood, basketball. So he ran with the ball like the hounds were chasing him. He could drop any of the older guys at the court in a blaze of crossovers, fadeaways, and finger rolls, and the younger guys didn't stand a chance. Justin saw his way out, and he ran for it. But the world has a funny way of changing right when you think you've got things figured out, and that's just what happened to Justin. All right, so I'm just going to put BB for basketball. One day when Justin was shooting